I'll start where the Lubbock Police Department got the call. We'll go through a couple of points there and how we've picked this up, and when we first came in contact with the suspect in this case. On Sunday, the day before the incident that we're all here talking about, which was the 8th, from what we understand, a firearm was stolen from a house out in town, and that wasn't immediately reported to the police. It was reported several hours later, at around midnight, towards 1 o'clock in the morning, leading into Monday, October 9th. Lubbock police officers responded to take that report. While en route to that call, a Lubbock police officer observed a vehicle matching the suspect's vehicle description and pulled that car over. The officers met with the suspect, interviewed him. They requested consent to search his vehicle, and he refused. The initial officer went to the resident, interviewed the people at the residence, took a report for the stolen firearm, and also took a report for what's called terroristic threat. Now, there's some misinformation about that. That can become quite confusing when you hear terroristic threat. That's a term that's under Texas law that basically means a very specific threat against a person. I don't want you to take that term and think that it means that there was a threat of some terrorist act or some bombing or something like that. That's not the case. And we need to clear that up, and we need to clarify what that means. I would encourage you to go into the Texas Penal Code and read what the crime of terroristic threat is. It's not what is being circulated around on social media. In this instance, what the allegation was and what the reported crime was very simply that the individual threatened to do very isolated, very specific harm to the reporting party, and it is simply a Class B misdemeanor. Again, it's not this overarching thing that we think of when you hear the word terrorist or terroristic. It's perhaps outdated in the Texas Penal Code, but it remains on the books, and that's what it's titled. So hopefully we can clear that aspect of it up. The officers took that report. When they're interacting with the suspect out in town, they're faced with a circumstance of whether or not to search this vehicle. They asked for consent, and that was refused. They entertained whether or not they had enough to search it without that consent, and they did not. There was not enough probable cause to search it on its own, nor to get a warrant for the vehicle. They thought there might be perhaps even drugs in the vehicle. They looked into whether or not a drug dog was available to come and sniff the vehicle, and there was not one available. They looked at a few avenues. Ultimately, it would have been unconstitutional for the officers to search the vehicle. There was no arrestable charge. There was nothing to hold the individual on at that time, so they released him. I want to be very, very clear on that. There's no criticism to be had of the officers at that time. They wrote their report and went on to the next calls. Later that day, and these are some things we can't get into at this time. Later that day, there were some other reports made through the Texas Tech Police Department, and there were reports made through some of the mechanisms that they have, as well as with the individual's family, as the day passed on October the 9th, on Monday. The Texas Tech Police Department responded to the check welfare call that evening. Officer East and other officers arrested the individual and had him at the Texas Tech Police Department. There's some confusion over whether there was an interrogation going on or anything like that. That's not the case. He was being processed to be booked into the jail. And during that time, Officer East was shot and killed inside the Texas Tech Police Department. We received that call of shots fired within 2 minutes of it occurring. We got that call at I believe 7:46 p.m. We began responding units to the campus and had officers on the campus within 3 minutes at 7:49 p.m. So when we began to respond to the campus, I want to make very clear that we were able to swarm officers from the Lubbock Police Department, the Lubbock County Sheriff's Office, the Department of Public Safety, the Texas Rangers, the FBI, I believe it was an ATF agent. Law enforcement officers from all over this region began to diverge onto the Texas Tech campus and lock that area down to cast a net from under which the suspect could not escape and could do no further harm. I'll confirm, in fact, that the suspect did try to make it back to his dorm room, was unable to get into his dorm room, was unable to get very far into the dorm. He immediately saw that there was law enforcement there and had to leave again. He was unable to get to his vehicle. Law enforcement officers had the vehicle. We were on top of the vehicle. He was first sighted at 9:08 p.m. and was taken into custody by a Texas Tech police officer at 9:26 p.m.